Yeah, my name is Larry Buchan. I'm from Calgary originally, born in '49, and when I was 51 years old, we were on a holiday and on a bus tour, and we had an accident, and I ended up quadriplegic, level C4-6 incomplete, and a lot of post rehab, everything, quite a struggle, and but finally, after a year, I was back home and in the community again, and my life interests, were curtailed in some degree, but my enthusiasm and hobbies and stuff I was able to carry on with. Father came here in 1911 when he was 3 years old. He was always quite interested in the history and told me a lot about the community and stuff. And one of his best friends worked on the Canadian Pacific Railway, and through them talking about the old times in the '30s and the steam and everything, I kind of caught the bug, the romance of it all. And I left school quite early when I was 16, and I started an apprenticeship in the CPR Ogden repair shops in the era of the mid-'60s, where all the streamlined diesels were there, the first generation, lots of passenger trains. So it was quite an exciting era for a 16-year-old to be in part of that culture and grow up around it. I basically worked most of my life, went into the plumbing trade, flour milling trade, but in '73 I went back to my first love, the railway, hiring on in the running trades in the yards in Calgary, and accumulating with 20 years working as a locomotive engineer around Alberta. During my career, like I say, I really did love my job on the railway, and I became quite interested in the history, and later on I became quite active in the union I belonged to, the locomotive engineers, so I became kind of a historian in that facet of it. And I started collecting a lot of Union Railway memorabilia. And then when I hired on in the running trades, I had to carry a watch, a railway grade watch that was required. Well, I had skin allergies, so I never could wear wristwatches, so I bought an old Hamilton pocket watch for $50, People were trading them in for wristwatches at the time. And I was fascinated by the machine work and the fine workmanship that was used to manufacture these fine timepieces. So I got the bug, and I started collecting railway watches in the 1980s early, and traveled all over North America to shows in the United States and across Canada, collecting and talking to people and attending seminars. So I was quite interested in that field, along with a lot of this regalia and brotherhood memorabilia from the labor history of the railway. Digging around down in the archives of the Glenbow Museum, I found the watch repair records for the CPR watch inspector in East Calgary. He had been there from about 1917 right up to the 1970s. And comparing the numbers of the back of the case, I found the whole history of my watch that belonged to a yardmaster in 1940s who had traded it in on the wristwatch when I bought it for $50. And it had the dates of servicing when it was cleaned. And I phoned him up. He was still retired. And he bought it from a yard clerk who bought it from a boomer brakeman, like a kind of a transient brakeman, during the Depression years. So there was a whole history in that timepiece, the past reaching out. It was a real plus. Like I say, it was a jewel in the rough. It doesn't look that much, but it's probably one of the more treasured pieces of my collection. Well, going back to adapting my life after my accident, I think one of my biggest peer support I got was from Mark Ross, that got me started with a voice-activated computer. And through that, most of my daily activities centers around working on the computer. I have a website, and I talk a lot about my career history, and I'm interactive in some other groups in the States of watch and clock collectors. And I'm kind of an expert because of my other interests in the railway field and CPR history, Canadian railway history. So it's opened up great windows for me to, keep active and, like I say, it's exercise every day for the mind, and you learn something every day and never stop learning, and it's just, the technology out there today is just phenomenal. I've built myself kind of a museum out in our barn with a lot of artifacts and things over the years, and of course, being in the collecting field in the 1980s, well, you could go to antique shows down at the Stampede grounds and walk around all day and never see nothing, but there's been quite an explosion here in the turn of the century with things like eBay and on the internet where people can find things that were never seen before, literally, that's tucked away in someone's shop somewhere, and it's just opened up the whole market. It's exciting collecting all this artifacts and accumulating all this history. And like I say, we're only temporary custodians of these items and artifacts. Somewhere down the line, decisions will have to be made, and hopefully some kind of legacy can be set up for the future, and to keep the interest alive. And I hope, I'm not, that old yet that I don't have to make the decision right away, but hopefully something will fit into place in the future.